Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. College football week 1 continues. We're on to Sunday. Got two big games here. As far as Saturday, it's looking like I'm going to have a losing day. My bets are 1-3 as of right now, and I still have I still have like 3 or 4 bets left. So technically, I could still turn it around and have a winning day, but it's not looking like it. A lot of fun though. It's great that football season is back, man. Just having all the TVs going. Fun day. But yeah, 2 big games on Sunday. Oh, and by the way, at the end, I'm playing a couple of clips. Now that we're into football season, there's a lot of not necessarily new people to my channel, but maybe people that haven't been around in a while. So I'm going to play a couple clips and just stick around for 15 minutes and watch them. I think there's some good information. You might get something out of it. So if you're able to hang out for about 15 minutes at the end, cool. If not, no big deal. Let's do it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. First up, we got Virginia Tech on the road against not on the road. This game is at Mercedes-Benz, so this is not a true road game. But it's Virginia Tech, South Carolina. This one was at 8 about a week ago. They upped the limits to 10K, 20K. When they upped the limits to 30K, they got hit with some hokey money. We're now down to 7 at Circa here. All right, Virginia Tech, South Carolina. If you watch the live show, you already know my thoughts on this one. We've talked about it twice already. But a real quick summary. I think the hype for South Carolina has gotten a little out of control here. They were playing some great football down the stretch last season. And if you remember, right before the college football playoff, during the when they were setting the playoff teams, there were a lot of people that were advocating for South Carolina to be in the playoff, which obviously would have been ridiculous, but they were red hot. Nobody wanted to play South Carolina down the stretch last year. So they were playing their best football down the stretch last season, and they bring back their superstar up-and-coming quarterback here in Lenore Sellers. And Sellers looks like a freak athlete. He might be worth all the hype, truly. But again, to reiterate what I've kind of been repeating all week, I think people have a distorted vision on what South Carolina was last year based on the highlights and the hype and the headlines. I mean, Sellers was the man. But if you look at South Carolina, if you followed along with South Carolina last season, their strength was the defense. They were an elite defense, and they were a run-first team with Rocket Sanders. Well, with Rocket Sanders and Sellers. Sellers contributed a lot to the rushing attack, and he's still there, obviously. But they were a defensive team with a superstar NFL running back. The defense is gone, and I feel like it's not even being talked about. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces from last year's South Carolina defense are currently in the NFL. 8. That was the strength of the team, is the defense, and the entire defense is, well, not the entire defense. They bring back a few pieces, but I feel like it's not getting talked about enough. And let's not forget all this hype that Sellers is getting right now. And again, I want to be clear, Sellers might be worth all the hype. He made some crazy plays last year. Clearly, he's a very gifted athlete. So this isn't me saying that Sellers isn't all that or nothing like that. I'm just saying all the hype that Sellers is getting right now, if we rewind the clocks back a year to what's today's date? August 30th last year, the same things were being said about Kyron Drones and Virginia Tech. If you remember, last year was Virginia Tech's year. They were a dark horse team to win the ACC, dark horse college football playoff team. Kyron Drones was getting the same hype last year. Now, this is not the same Virginia Tech team. They lost a lot of pieces. I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just saying hype and social media headlines, it's not the best indicator of production on the field. I mean, Kyron Drones may be every bit as good as Sellers. We'll wait and see. And again, here's the Virginia Tech offense. Not trying to downplay the losses. They lost a lot of pieces from this offense. Top 3 receivers, I believe. Yeah, top 3 receivers, top 2 RBs. And the piece they brought in to replace Tootin, their all-conference running back, Terrian Stewart, he's listed as questionable. So Stewart might not even play in this game. Also, their right guard, Brody Meadows, he's banged up as well. He's listed as probable. So not only did they lose pieces, they're also dealing with injuries. I'm not trying to say Virginia Tech looks great. I'm just saying the South Carolina hype has kind of been blown out of proportion here. Now, when we take a look at the South Carolina offense, yeah, you've got Lenore Sellers, who has a sky-high NFL caliber talent ceiling. You've got Nick Harbor, who also could be, 6'5", 235 wide receiver. That could be Terrell Owens right there. You've got the quarterback, you've got receivers. Both offensive tackles are back, but I'm a little worried that all three pieces of the interior offensive line are gone, considering this was a run-first program last year. I believe they were like 15th or 16th in rushing frequency. This is a team that ran the ball a lot, and I'm not sure if they're just going to be able to hand the ball off and rip 4 or 5 yards of carry between the tackles against this Virginia Tech defense. Yes, Virginia Tech takes some big losses on the defense. Entire secondary's gone. But if you look up the middle, they've got Kelvin Gilliam back, their defensive tackle, and they've got their 2 leading tacklers back, their 2 inside linebackers. So I don't think South Carolina, missing their interior offensive line, those 3 pieces are gone, the 2 guards in the center, I don't think they're going to be able to just hand the ball off and rip 4 or 5 yard carries up the middle on Virginia Tech. That brings back the middle of their defense. By the way, a Virginia Tech defense that was very good last year. So if South Carolina wants to cover this big number, in my opinion, they're going to need to make plays on the sidelines. They're going to need to make plays downfield, which maybe they can. I'm just saying that's not what South Carolina was last year. I think this number was, I got a great number here. I got Virginia Tech plus 8.5. It's at 7 now. I don't know if I would still play it at 7. At 7, it would be Virginia Tech or pass. I probably would make the fair price around 6.5 for this one. So it would be Virginia Tech or pass at 7. You know what? You could still get a 7.5. So if you could still get a 7.5, I'd do that. But yeah, I'm on Virginia Tech in this one. I got plus 8.5. Next up, we got a fun one here, Notre Dame, Miami. This one was sitting at 2.5. When they upped the limits to 40K, looks like they got hit. On the Notre Dame side, they upped it to 3, and then they upped the limits to 40K and then got hit with some Miami plus 3 money. So Circus got this at 2.5. Most sports books have this up at 3, though. Notre Dame, Miami at Hard Rock, and I'm going to get ripped on in the comments for this one because I'm going to do something so cowardly. So if you heard me talk about, if you watched the live show, I already talked about this game during the week. I had Scoop and Mac on. We talked about this one, I think on Monday. And I had said I'd like Notre Dame at 2.5. I didn't get it. To be honest, I thought I'd be able to get a better number later in the week. It's the opposite of that. It's mostly at 3 now. So it looks like some sharp action came in on the Notre Dame side, at least as of right now when I'm recording this. My original thoughts on this game, and it's not that my thoughts have completely changed, but my original thoughts on the game were Notre Dame is going to hand the ball off to their All-American running back, and there's not a damn thing Miami's defensive front seven can do about it. Those were my initial thoughts on the game, and I'm not saying those thoughts have necessarily changed. Notre Dame's offensive line should be very strong. They did lose their right guard. I think he was in a motorcycle accident or something in early July, but he's going to miss the start of the season. They've got Sullivan Absher stepping up. It's probably going to start at right guard. So I suppose that's the weak spot of the Notre Dame offensive line. But no question, this is a very, very strong offensive line with one of the best running backs in the country. I just don't understand how Miami's defensive line competes with that. It's not that I think Miami's defensive line is necessarily bad. In fact, I think on paper it's better entering the season. They've got better edge rushers. They lose 4 pieces on the defensive line there, but Justin Scott should be huge for them in the middle. He was a 5-star recruit last year. Didn't play a ton as a true freshman, but he should be a real serious piece for them in the middle. They've got their linebackers back. So it's not that I think Miami's front seven is bad. In fact, I do think it's better. It's just kind of new. The defensive line, it's not the starting defensive line they had last year. And also they've got a new DC here. They fired Guidry. They bring in Corey Heatherman, who was with Minnesota last year, and then he was with Rutgers before that. So it's just very new. And to open up with a new defensive line and a new DC against Notre Dame's offensive line and Jeremiah Love, it's just kind of a tough draw for the first game of the season. Now, one thing I will say in favor of Miami's defensive front, and I feel this needs to be mentioned, does not having Riley Leonard impact the rushing attack? Because certainly Notre Dame's, they've got the All-American running back. They've got the offensive line, right? They check those 2 boxes. But last year's Notre Dame offense had a third element to that rushing attack, Riley Leonard. You replace that with C.J. Carr, who certainly, he may be a better thrower than Riley Leonard. I think anyone is a better thrower than Riley Leonard was early in the year last year. But C.J. Carr is certainly not the athlete that Riley Leonard is. So does not having Riley Leonard's legs make this Notre Dame rushing attack less dynamic? I think that's a fair point. And if you're betting Miami, I think you're pointing at that. But there's also another side to that. You could say if CJ Carr has arm talent, that gives Notre Dame another aspect of their offense that makes them tougher to defend. So it's a double-edged sword there. But we've seen these first-time starting quarterbacks struggle in these true road games. We saw it a couple times. We'll talk about it at the end, but I don't know if we could expect CJ Carr to just piece up Miami's secondary, even though it is a brand new secondary. I don't know if that's realistic. Now, on the other side of the ball, we got Miami's offense against Notre Dame's defense. And obviously the lead story on this side is all the NFL talent that's gone from that Miami offense. I mean, they lost so many weapons. Cam Ward, obviously. All those receivers are gone. Restrepo, Jacoby George, Samuel Brown, Horton, they're all gone. Their NFL running back is gone. 7th-round pick to the Seahawks. That's Damian Martinez. He was clutch for them, too. They lost so many weapons from this offense. Now, obviously, I think they're going to be fine at quarterback. They bring in Carson Beck. He's not a first-time starter. He's no stranger to big games. In fact, if you rewind a year ago, Carson Beck's name was getting thrown around as a possible first overall pick, that a spot that ended up going to Cam Ward. Carson Beck was projected to be that last year. So this is a dude with a high ceiling. I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Beck gives you a similar production that Cam Ward did. I probably would be surprised because the receivers are gone, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Beck replays his way back into the discussion of a first-round pick in the NFL draft at all. I think actually a lot of people are expecting him to do that. Where I'm worried is the receivers and the RBs. They definitely take a step backwards there. And this Notre Dame defense is definitely going to be very strong. Losing Xavier Watts definitely hurts. But they bring back a lot of production here. And Devontae Smith from Alabama is a defensive back that should fit right in. Notre Dame's going to have a very good defense. I don't think anyone would even argue that. So, about betting this game, and I mentioned earlier how the comments were going to rip me. I've kind of changed sides here. I haven't bet the game, but originally I said I was leaning Notre Dame at the 2.5. And this is what I'm about to say is stupid. You should never overreact to things like this. But what have we seen so far in week 1? We've seen these home environments, like these first-time starters in their first true road games. We've seen them struggle. We've seen a couple home games in late August in the Florida humidity, South Florida at Raymond James. That place was going crazy. South Florida beat the shit out of Boise as a sizable home dog. Tallahassee, Florida State was going nuts. 13.5, 14-point dogs. They controlled the game start to finish against Alabama. We've seen these late August Florida humidity home games. These home dogs are getting this place is going to be going crazy at Hard Rock. And after seeing what's been going on in these games so far this season, I feel when I initially looked at this game and I put the fair price around Notre Dame minus 3.5, I wasn't accounting enough for the home environment here that's going to be going crazy. I can't watching the first half of that Florida State game, I had the sound on and this place is going crazy, and Hard Rock's going to be going crazy for this one with CJ Carr making his first start. So it would be Miami now. I've dropped my fair price on this one from 3.5 for Notre Dame down to 2.5. So at 3, I would actually lean Miami plus 3. Maybe I bet it to do some gambling, but I'm really not sure, but I think this place is going to be going crazy. So give me Miami plus 3. I'll let you know if I actually bet it. As of right now, I don't have a bet in the game. All right, let's have a fun Sunday. Enjoy these games. If you're able to stick around, watch these couple clips, cool. See you all on the live show. With so many new people in the sports betting space, which has been awesome, and I've been on the receiving end of that, obviously, more traffic to the channel. There's some misconception on what you're actually doing or what the goal is or what a handicapper is probably the best way to phrase it. So real quick, the only reason I'm explaining this is I think it'll actually help some people understand. So I think there's a misconception out there that a handicapper makes picks, which is just not true. That's not what a handicapper does. If you're talking about high-level trading, like somebody that's going to be trading 6 figures into these markets, now, obviously, somebody like that is going to have a handicapper on the staff, maybe even multiple, a handicapper, a quant, a number cruncher, whatever you want to call them. There's going to be people like that on the staff. What the handicapper or handicappers are giving the trader is not a pick. They're not saying 49ers. What they're giving the trader is a fair price. For example, Seahawks 49ers, your handicapper might say the fair price for this game is 5.1. Now, the trader takes that information, takes it to the market, and bets accordingly. So they're going to be betting 49ers at 3.5 or better, or they're going to be betting Seattle at +7 or better. They're not going to the market with a pick from their handicapper. They're going to the market with a fair price, and they're taking profitable positions based on their handicapper's fair price. My handicapper is saying this game's going to close at San Francisco -5, -111 to the San Francisco side. I'm going to take profitable positions accordingly. Same thing for baseball. Your handicapper's not saying, hey, go bet the Cardinals. They're saying the fair price of this game is Cardinals -120, Pirates +120, and the trader is then taking that information to the market. They're betting the Pirates at +128 or better, or they're betting the Cardinals at -110 or better. They're taking the fair price calculated by their handicapper to the market and taking profitable positions based on that information. So the idea that a handicapper makes picks, it's just a misconception. And if you're trying to handicap games, get out of the mindset of making picks. You want to set a fair price. So the current listed price is irrelevant. You shouldn't even be looking at it. You should be analyzing the matchup, coming up with your fair price, and then taking that information to the market. It's step one. What is the fair price, or what is my calculated fair price for this game? Step two, what is the current listed price, and can I get a profitable wager down on either side? Step three, what are the current limits / how confident should I be in my edge? So yeah, I'll talk about this in more detail at a later time. I just wanted to record that real quick. But for right now, just to explain closing line value as I see it, I think it'll give people a better understanding of what your goal is if you're trying to be a more profitable bettor. So closing line value. Real quick, going to describe the roulette table. And all of you probably already know this, but the reason I'm going to describe this real quick is I'm going to reference it. I'm going to use it as a metaphor throughout. So I'm assuming most of you know how the roulette table works. I'm talking specifically about the bets on black or red. These bets pay out 1-to-1, aka +100. Obviously, we know these are negative EV bets, right? You will lose money placing this bet long term. That doesn't mean you can't win. I mean, of course, you can hit a bunch of reds in a row. You can have a winning week, even a winning month. But it's a mathematical certainty that you will lose money long term playing this bet. You're getting a 1-to-1 payout, a +100 payout on something that has a 48.4% chance of hitting. It's a negative EV bet. You will lose long term if you're playing black or red or any bet on the roulette table. But for this example, black or red on the roulette table, I'm praying all of you already knew that. So how are we using that in a video about closing line value and sports betting? All right, let's get into it. So before you can understand closing line value, you first need to understand what the closing line is, and not just what it is, more importantly, how we arrive at the closing line. So I'm going to use the NFL as an example. I mean, whenever you're talking about something like this, it's just always easiest to use the NFL. Everyone understands the NFL. So for this example, I'm going to use an NFL game. Let's say Seattle on the road at San Francisco. Seahawks 49ers in San Francisco. The line opens up on the previous Sunday. So we're 7 days away from the game. Line opens up San Francisco -3.5. Now, it's important to take note that when this line opens up, there will be super low limits. They will not be taking large bets at that time. The limits at open might be as low as $5,000. And that's important. You'll understand why in a little bit. But they open the line at San Francisco -3.5, 7 days before the game, so the previous Sunday, and the limits are $5,000. So now let's fast forward to Tuesday. They've been taking action in this market for 2 days. Obviously not a lot because the limits are only $5,000, but they've been taking early action in for 2 days in this market. What they're monitoring at this time is specifically the action from their sharp players, and this is very important. The market does not care. The bookmaker does not care what the casual public bettor is doing. I mean, in this instance, I would imagine the quote-unquote public would be coming in on San Francisco at home, but the important takeaway is the market doesn't care. Bookmaker does not care what the quote-unquote public is doing. They're monitoring specifically the action from their sharp players. That is what will influence the market here, the action from their sharp players. So it's Tuesday now. 2 days of action in is at 5K limits. Let's say the majority of the action coming in from their sharp players, from accounts that are flagged as sharp, coming in on the San Francisco side. So now they're going to move the line to San Francisco -4 because their sharp players have told them by betting San Francisco that that number is too low. So they react to the sharp action. They move it up to 4. They also raise the limits at this point up to, say, 20K. And I'm just spitballing here. They raise the limits up to $20,000 because they are now more confident in their number. It's important to take note. The sportsbook's overall goal is not to balance the action. It's to get their number perfect, because if the line is perfect, every bet placed into that market will be negative EV. If 4.5 is the perfect number and that game's played 1,000 times, San Francisco's going to cover 500, Seattle's going to cover 500. Whatever side you're betting, you're down at minus 110. So that's the sportsbook's goal, not to balance the market, not to balance the action on or balance the handle on either side. Their goal is to get the number perfect. And the way they do that is by reacting to their sharp players. Their sharp players tell them where the line should be based on where they place their wagers. Now, a quick side note here, and this is a little bit off topic, but it's important to know. You don't want to get overly hung up on what the line's doing throughout the week while the market is still open. I mean, obviously you want to pay attention to it, but another element of this that it's important to know, these sharp groups and these professional bettors will often take a position on the opposite side with an end goal in mind. So for example, in this example, San Francisco -4, they raised the limits to 20K. They might come in and bet San Francisco -4 because the position they really want is Seattle +6 on Saturday when they raise the limits to 100K. So they might come in when they raise the limits to 20K on San Francisco to drive the market up to hammer Seattle at +6. They might have an end goal in mind. So you don't want to get overly hung up on every single duck and dive the market does throughout the week. This video, we're talking about the closing line. Obviously, we need to discuss how we get there. Anyway, let's get back to our example, and let's just keep it the same. Let's fast forward to Saturday. The line is now San Francisco -6 because throughout the week, the majority of the action that came in from their sharp players was on the 49ers side. So it's Saturday. They're now more confident because they've gotten more action in from their sharp players. They're up to 6, raising the limits to 100K. And just like I said in my previous example, let's say they get hammered with Seattle money at +6. So as soon as they up the limits to 100K at 6, sharp groups, pro bettors, they come in and nuke them at Seattle +6, immediately dropping the line back to 4.5. So now it's Sunday morning, game day. We're at San Francisco -4.5. And at this point, the bookmaker is extremely comfortable with this number because think about how we got here. This number, this 4.5, is a culmination. Every single analytical genius, every single brilliant football mind, every single professional bettor, every single sharp betting group have all weighed in to arrive at this 4.5. So they are very comfortable at this number at 4.5. Why do you think they raised the limits to 200,000 on game day? Because they are confident you're not going to beat them at that 4.5 number. That's a perfectly efficient market. I'll bring the graphic back up. They are confident, based on the opinion of every single brilliant football mind, that at this number, at -110, you are not going to beat them. The market's perfectly efficient. That's why they say betting into the closing line will always be a negative EV bet. If you're betting into that market at that number, you're not going to win. You're going to go 500 at -110, and you're going to have a negative ROI. Now, I want to repeat that because it's extremely important. That closing line, you're not going to beat that number. Every bet placed into that market is going to be negative EV. If you're claiming you can beat the market at the closing line, you're claiming to be smarter than every single person that has been into that market. Every single brilliant analytical football mind, you're claiming to be able to beat their number. You can't. If you're placing bets into the market at the closing line, you will lose long term. Just like the roulette table, you're going to lose long term. Now, that doesn't mean you can't win. If this closing line is San Francisco -4.5, someone's going to cover. You can bet 49ers -4.5. Sure, you can win the bet. But if you place that bet, 49ers -4.5 into the closing line, you will lose in the long term. Now, that's not to say I don't do it from time to time. I mean, shit, if you watch the show, I say it all the time. I'm going to place this, but I'm just doing some gambling. When I say that, that's essentially me saying, guys, this isn't going to beat the market. This is a negative EV bet. I'm just doing some gambling. This is not going to beat the market. I'm not going to beat the closing line here. That's what I mean when I'm saying that. I mean, I love sports. I love betting on sports. So I'll bet into the closing line. Screw it. I'm down to gamble. But just know, if you're betting into the market at the closing line, like, you're not going to win. You're not making a profitable decision. So finally, why don't we get to the purpose of this video? What about when you beat the closing line? Say you grab San Francisco -3.5 early in the week, or you grab Seattle +6 on Saturday morning. Both are excellent bets. What if you beat the closing line? Well, when that game starts, you are holding a plus EV slip. That's the same thing as sitting down at the roulette table, getting a bet down on red, and getting plus 110 odds on it. That is a plus EV bet there. Now, this is most commonly what you hear, and this is crazy. People will get good closing line value. They'll get good CLV on their bet. The bet will lose, and they'll be like, CLV is meaningless. It doesn't work. Think about how silly it is. Let's go back to the roulette metaphor. Someone places a bet on red at plus 110. It spins black, and they're like, CLV is meaningless. Think of how silly that is. I mean, yeah, you can get down at red at plus 110. It could still spin black. It could spin black 5 times in a row. I promise you're going to turn a profit over time if you're getting down on red at plus 110. It's math. I promise you will. So anyway, at this point, I think everyone's probably following. I explained that pretty simply. So the next question would be, how can you use this information to improve on what you're currently doing? And in my opinion, what knowing this does is really gives you a good grasp on figuring out what's working, because that's such a difficult part of betting on sports. I mean, you try out new methods and you go by wins and losses, and that's really a terrible indicator. Maybe you try betting something stupid like home underdogs coming off a road trip or whatever the hell, and you're like, hey, this method's working. I went 11-6 in my bets this week. But that really doesn't tell you anything. You can sit down at the roulette table and place 17 bets on red and go 11-6. Does that all of a sudden make betting on red a good bet? Of course not. So the wins and losses, terrible indicator on whether or not you're placing good bets. You would need months and months of data to determine whether or not you're placing good bets simply based on wins and losses. Think about the roulette table. If you're placing bets on plus 110, just going by overall earnings, it would take a lot of spins before you start seeing your chip stack rise. I mean, it's going to spin black. You're going to lose a bunch. It would take a while. So if you're just going by wins and losses and earnings, I mean, you're going to need months of data to figure out if what you're doing is working. So what knowing this information gives you is a much better grasp on how to tell whether or not you're placing good bets. For example, if I see someone and they're sharing their bets every day, if a couple weeks go by and this person is consistently beating the closing line, I don't need to see results. I know that person is going to be profitable. Just like if I see someone sit down at the roulette table and see them consistently getting bets down on red at plus 110, I don't need to see the spins. Why would you need to see the spins? You know that person's going to win money. It's math. It's the best indication on whether or not you placed a good bet, and that's what you should be focusing on. Beating the market. When the game starts, you want to be holding a plus EV ticket. When that roulette wheel spins, you want to be on red or black. Whatever side you're on, you just want to be on at plus 110. You want to beat the market. So when you're taking a look at the matchups, whatever your process is, whether you're modeling games out or just situational handicapping or however you do it, and you're looking and you're like, oh, I like the Knicks here. The line's -4.5. I have this one at -7. So I'm going to bet New York -4.5. What you're hoping for is tomorrow morning or whenever they raise the limits, sharp groups come and place that exact same wager. So it closes up at 6.5, 7. So when that game tips off, you are holding a plus EV ticket. And the best part about understanding this is it's pure. You can't bullshit it. It's a simple question. Are you beating the market or not? If when I look at my bets from the last week, I'm not looking at wins and losses. Those are extremely volatile. I'm looking to see if I beat the market consistently. I mean, there are days where I get smoked by the market and still go 5-1, and there are days where I place excellent bets and go 1-5. That's completely volatile. What I'm looking at is, am I beating the market? Because if I'm beating the market, I know I'm going to win long term.